I'm going to be discussing I'm going to discuss um let's discuss Albert Einstein. Well, um Albert Einstein's theories are very um not saying he didn't make mistakes. Um, it's just his approach to the subject. Um, it's definitely a contrast between his approach to Isaac Newton um, or Richard Feynman. They both are Stephen Hawking. They all have contributed greatly to the field. Um, and I sadly don't have much knowledge on the subject. Um, I've always realized that I can't really I haven't memorized the theory of relativity, right? 'Cause, yeah, the lettering and the oversimplification, it doesn't register to me, right? E equals mc squared doesn't really make sense to me because I haven't studied physics in college. I haven't really in the school, my grade school, K to 12, I didn't really get an explanation of the theory of relativity or anything like that, right? I have learned physics, you know, in the public school I went to, right? Um, it, I, did not really learn anything about Albert Einstein. So, for most part, however, I did realize that some of the ideas, the calculus of Isaac Newton, some of the errors have been covered up. And I always thought, what could be the reason? And I just thought maybe it's because of Albert Einstein. Because it's like a lot of the calculus is very messy and very difficult to um, you know um, very messy math, right? So especially with the proofs, much as much sometimes it's better to just focus on the other thing, just build upon that, right? That's what Albert Einstein did, and he made other events. He just I I don't you probably oversimplify some things. It's fine because physics education is at a main it's arguably some people don't like it, right? You can ask physics teachers and professors. Some have problems with the system that we have, and some like it, right? Um, we're not even going to discuss like his personal life, right? So that should be the main this should be the main source of information, and we're going to type it. I don't really, I really don't want to type it based on that. And um, considering theories that physics have come across, it's definitely a lot of it's been abstract. I've watched a few videos from leading physicists of today. I cannot say that they were definitely injured. I can't say enough that they were definitely influenced by Albert Einstein in terms of Richard Feynman. He's far more methodological, and he just asks students to have a certain mindset in learning the subject, right? Because um you know the thing is you cannot most of these folks, even if they have the money to replicate these experiments, it's just not practical, right? That's why we have to have these buildings built. They're called universities, right? Because you're not going to make those experiments at home. The home is not where you make those experiments. Right? You do not have an entire room in your house devoted on a physics experiment. And then you have to have safety goggles. No, no, no. Right? You can't. That's why these buildings have to be built, right? Um. So, but the thing is, these buildings are very exclusive. You have to be a student, you have to, such and such, right? You can't just have this, rogue stranger has, no, you can't have some random person who, thinks they do. You can't. That can't happen, right? So there's a slight downside to that. It's I haven't really discussed in depth of physics education, but for the most part, if we look at the things that science has produced and the things that science has failed to produce, I can prioritize Albert Einstein as an I because I thought, there's so many things that could have occurred. I've heard a little bit about science fiction, and just like, just the, I'm not saying that we should have discovered anything. That's not the point. I'm saying, what physics has been able to, come up with, what space exploration and such and such, I could probably say that is because of Albert Einstein being an alien. Because um, because the alpha types. I'm not saying the alpha types would want a flying car, or I don't know, I can't think of any other examples. Like, in terms of, not saying that we should have, you know, clones of humans or magic portal. No, no, no. I'm not even saying that those things. You know. However, um, you know, Albert Einstein. Um, I'm not saying that an INTP with such talent would have utilized it in a different way. Can't say that. I'm not even sure what if Albert Einstein was INTP. I'm trying to think of the possibilities. Perhaps he might have um, ended up, you know, um, pursuing a different career, right? So, or he, maybe he would have been a teacher. Or it's just saying. It's just, who knows? And some of his quotes do not register me as him having introverted thinking. Because you know, it's just the school system at the time, was very, very different. Um, it was certainly not progressive. Um, I'm not going to elaborate on all the things that, you know, on the terminology that's used in the progressive education in the Pacific Northwest of this country, in the public school. I'm just saying, like, back then they had chalk, they had, I don't even know if there was, other, they had chalk, they didn't have these iPads, they didn't have these, fancy whiteboards. Um, you know, it, I don't know, like the route memorization approach is different. They didn't have multiple choice tests with the Scantrons back then. So, that alone doesn't, like, you can't just say that, such school systems are better suited for beta tests. That alone doesn't rule it out. Um, for sure, INFP Albert Einstein, he went to the U.S., um, and just contributed heavily to the field of physics. Perhaps law of relativity wasn't simplified it is, the field of physics would have taken a different approach. For the most part, what I've observed with, you know, just, walking around in college campus is that, I don't know, like, get a sense of something, like, I'm not saying that we should, there's plenty of amazing um, physicists graduating. Um, it's just, I don't know, like, you get the sense that, you know, like, you compare it to the folks who thought flying cars would actually occur, it really makes me think that Albert Einstein is INFP. I mean, like, flying cars is certainly a beta type thing to aspire